Greetings and welcome back to modded Kerbal Space Program Career Mode. In the last episode we did our first landing and recovery of a probe from Minmus. So let's take a look at what contracts we have available at this moment. Okay, so in this episode we're going to focus on build a new orbital station around Kerbin and put a Kerbal in orbit for 30 days. We can do that as a single mission. So I'm going to unlock a couple of science nodes, not because we strictly need them to do this mission, but because I just like building space stations and I like sticking things on them. So we're going to take this node, which has this observation window, and this node, which has these external life support and chemical plant parts. And then we're going to take this node, which has water recycler, and float to crew experiments. I'll have to check out what float is. And that's probably all the science we want to spend for now, so let's see what we can build with that. So here's my space station, Kerbin Station 1, or Kerbin Station 1.2, I guess, because I've been playing around with designs a little bit. Let's take a look at our contract for a moment and make sure this fits all of our contractual obligations. Antenna, yes. Docking port, yes. Generate power, yes. Fully assembled when launched. Supporting at least 5 Kerbals. These little inflatable pods hold 3 Kerbals each, so those two alone take care of that. But we've also got a Kerbal seat in here, and I think 2 in here, and maybe 3 up here, so we've got more than enough space. And then we just need to get to orbit of Kerbin and maintain stability for 10 seconds. So let's look at the design a little bit. This is our command pod, and then we've got a 4-way thing here. And on the back, this is like supposed to be a habitation module, but I guess I'm kind of using it as an entryway for the airlock back here. These two things are also habitation parts. They hold 3 Kerbals each. They're inflatable, so we can... Hang on, where's it at? Deflate them for launch to make things easier. And you have to have nitrogen on board your craft to inflate these inflatable parts, by the way. The way you know how much you need is you need 1,000 units of nitrogen for every cubic meter. So this has 6.2 cubic meters, so we'll need 6,200 units of nitrogen on board to inflate that. We've got a nitrogen tank right here with 1,500, and there are 6 of those. So that's enough to inflate one of these. We're going to need more to inflate the other one, so we'll have to bring some extra nitrogen with us. Let's not forget to do that. This porthole on the bottom, it does have its own built-in science experiment, visual observation. I'm not quite sure how that works. I'm just going to crank that way up. I'm not quite sure how that works, but we'll see when we get into space. This is, again, the ScanSat part for normally visual scanning, but for biome scanning, the way I've custom modded it. But I'm actually not going to use it for that either. I just put it on here to be like a telescope for the people in the observation pod to use, just because I think it's kind of cool. Up front, this big hexagirder thingy, it contains monopropellant inside, as well as 600 battery worth of charge. And I've just smacked a bunch of solar panels on it. Still only have this one type of solar panel unlocked, so we'll just have to live with that. I also put some H2O2 fuel cells on it, and of course the antennas. And then this sort of rabbity looking thing up here, this is going to be our life support module. I played around with this for a little bit, trying to figure out something that looked neat, that was also functional. And I ended up using this GP20 pylon. I think this is a Kerbal Attachment Systems part, because it has this hose nozzle built in. But that means we'll be able to connect hoses to that and fill resources through the hose if we want to. I've glitched in a probe core, the cube probe core, just sort of offset it down inside the part. The part is supposed to be like a big concrete block, and I don't feel bad about glitching a part into that because we're not using it for structural integrity. So we've glitched a probe core into it so it's controllable. And we've got a few monopropellant tanks just to hold a small amount of monopropellant. These are actually quick scale downsized to 73% apparently. I wanted 4 tanks just for appearance sake, and 4 of the full-size tanks was just too much, so I tweak scaled them down. And it has these RCS blocks on it, 4 of them, and a docking port. So the idea is, as we upgrade our life support capabilities in the future, or if these break and need to be replaced, we can just undock this whole part and use the RCS and the probe core to fly it over and connect it to something that will take it back down to Kerbin and fly something else in and connect that will replace it. As for these two things, this one's carrying water electrolysis, and that way we can bring water up as supplies and then convert it into hydrogen and oxygen as needed. And it's also using a Sabatier process. I'm not sure how you're supposed to pronounce that. But that takes carbon dioxide, which we're producing as we breathe in here, and hydrogen, which is produced from the water electrolysis, and it turns that into water and liquid fuel, but we'll be dumping the liquid fuel because we don't need that. But that's one way to replenish some of our water use. It won't fully replenish what we use, but it'll help. In this one we've got water recycler, which will again help with replenishing parts. And this produces carbon dioxide too. We've currently got it set to dump, but we can save it as needed if we need to put it into the Sabatier process. And this also has a monoprop O2 fuel cell. That's really the only use we have for the monoprop we put on here. And it's quite a bit actually. But I just like the way this part looks. I could drain it, but whatever, screw it. So this whole thing weighs just under 10 tons. We need to get 10 tons to low Kerbin orbit. And the last minute addition up here, there's a probe core inside here. It's kind of hard to see. But this is just going to be a little detachable thing that we take up, and it just has a bunch of nitrogen tanks on board. This is the nitrogen we're going to use to inflate our habitats. And then once they're inflated, we'll just detach this thing and deorbit it. So let's build a launch vehicle to get this thing into low Kerbin orbit. Okay, here's my launch vessel. If you want to say this looks kind of jank, I'm not going to argue with you. But this is what I had to do with the parts we have available. So the biggest fairing we have unlocked is the 1.875 meter fairing. And it barely contained this space station. It was barely wide enough to take this in. I had to offset the station a little bit in the fairing, which is going to make our center of gravity offset a little bit. So we'll need to be careful when we're flying it. Upper stage is powered by 3 Terrier engines, hidden in a fairing to keep them aerodynamic while we're launching. And then down here we've got a skipper engine and 2 of the Bobcats on detachable boosters. There was something else I was just thinking that I wanted to do before I launched this, and now I can't think of what it was. We should get a reaction wheel in this thing somewhere. A serious one, since it's going to be off balanced. Let's put a big old reaction wheel right here. Let's face east and go to the launch pad and cross our fingers. Let's bring up our gravity turn mod. Destination 120? Is that good? I want to keep this thing below the radiation belts, but I don't actually know what altitude that is, so we'll just go for 120 and see how that does. Auto stage off, time warp on. Launch? We're going to monitor the fuel situation and drop these tanks manually. But we do need to be a little careful, because if we drop those tanks the moment they're empty, we'll be left with a too low of a thrust-to-weight ratio. So we're going to hold on to those tanks even when they're empty for a few seconds until we get a reasonable thrust-to-weight ratio here. Beginning our turn. Oh, there must be a light on the space station because it's shining through the fairing. Okay, those tanks are empty now. Thrust-to-weight ratio is still 1.1. I want to wait for that to hit like Oh, that's gravity turn throttling us down. Well, if you want to throttle us down, then it's probably time we could get rid of that. No, we should have held that a little longer. 1.1 is pretty low. But it should be okay. Greater than 1. Kind of a funky looking spacecraft right there. Apple Watch just passed 80. Of course, we're going to 120. And let's close gravity turn and see how we're doing on the map screen. So, tell me, game, where is the inner radiation belt? Oh, we're fine. 120 is fine. We're well inside of it. Okay, good. So at this point, we can get rid of this fairing. In fact, we could probably begin pressurizing our tanks, eh? So we're going to time warp here until we hit apoapsis, which is 10 minutes away. SAS on, point prograde. And we're going to bring periapsis up to roughly 120. We want to put this in a pretty circular orbit, a little bit above the low Kerbin orbit, so that it's easier to rendezvous with for future craft. There we go, 120 by 124, overshot a little bit, but that's fine. Turn SAS on, and let's pitch back, I guess, to get these solar panel array facing the sun. And we're going to leave this craft here in orbit, inflating its habitats. Let's go get the crew. So I've built this two-person crewed pod, just the Mark II command pod, with this nose cone assembly. The same one that we saved in sub-assemblies over here, so I can just grab it and plop it on. Below that we've just got, you know, fuel tank, RCS, monoprop, solar panel, carrier engine, high quality, that's what we want. The center stack with a Bobcat engine, high quality. And two boosters using Kodiak engines. I don't think those are high quality, are they? No, but they don't need to be because we only need to ignite them once. Basically, the reason I'm doing high quality is because I want more rated ignitions. So all we need is to get our crew on board. Take a look at our station contract, and just a reminder that we need to have 2 pilots on the station. So we need to bring both Jeb and Val, because they're both pilots. Now let's face east, and head to the launch pad. We want to rendezvous with Kerbin Station. So I'm going to time warp until Kerbin Station is just coming up over the horizon from Kerbal Space Center. Somewhere around there, close enough. Let's bring up our gravity turn mod. Aiming for an 80 kilometer, very low orbit, so that we'll be in a lower orbit than the space station. That'll give us options for how we want to rendezvous. Auto stage off, time warp on, and launch. A little loud, actually. Okay, we want to monitor the fuel and the booster so we can stage them off as needed. So let's turn SAS on, face down somewhat, and get rid of the launch escape system. We're still time warping, aren't we? Now let's face prograde, and we're just gonna stage off this lower bit, so that'll be open the fairing. And now let's light the engines and bring our apoapsis up to 80. You know, I could have left that shell on, it might have looked a little nicer to not drop it until we were actually needing the parachutes. Okay, let's take a look at the map. So we are behind the space station, which is good because we're in a lower orbit, which means we'll catch up to it. What would happen if we did a prograde burn here to lift ourselves up? How close would we be? We would be ahead. So we want to do that sooner. That's getting pretty close right there, isn't it? For now, let's point the nose at the maneuver vector and time warp to that node. Put the nose back on the maneuver vector. It'll be nice once I unlock the ability to have SAS hold the maneuver vector. That's always very convenient. So let's kill this and just take a look, and we'll do a low throttle burn and just get this as close as we can. 2.8 looks like it. 2.9 is fine, because we're going to do another burn right here. This one we're going to play with normal, anti-normal. There we go, 0.1 separation. As I've said before, I prefer 0.1 over 0.0. It's just a bit safer. Okay, let's point the nose at the maneuver vector. And I'm going to use the RCS thrusters for this. You could just as well do it with low throttle pulses of the main engine. But one thing you got to remember with Kerbalism is that your main engines have limited burn time and limited number of emissions. RCS do not. So RCS is good for these really short pulse on, pulse off sort of things. Let's turn RCS on. And I'm just going to start using my RCS to burn in that direction. And I'm just going to kill this. Watch here. Oh, we've already got 0.1. We don't need to adjust anymore. Okay, let's just time warp closer to the intersection. We want to be reference target, which you can change by clicking. We don't want orbit or surface. We want target. We're going to do target retrograde. There is our space station. If I remember right, physics range is 2.5 or 2.3 or something. We're going to see a bit of a lag when we cross physics range. There it is, 2.3. That lag is just the space station loading in. Estimated burn of 3 seconds. We will use the main engines for that. I take target to 0. Overshot it a little bit, so let's use the RCS to zero it out. There we go. Why are the lights flashing? I don't know, actually. Let's head over there and see what we can learn. I feel like we just landed in a sci-fi horror movie or something. Do a quick pulse. Probably should have used RCS for that, for the same reason as earlier, to save ignitions on the mains. I will use RCS to slow down here. Okay, let's zero out again now that we're close. I want to go to this docking port down here. So let's set that as target. Set our docking port as control from here. Aim camera. Just do a little bit of maneuvering and get over where we want to be. Wish we were in the daylight, to be honest. We'll work with it. Forward a bit right here. I can never remember which keys on my keyboard push me in which direction in translation mode. I might have to trial and error a little bit here. Seem to be consistently choosing the wrong direction for my first try, but that's okay. Now let's point the nose towards the docking port. Head that way. We want to kind of adjust things so that our prograde vector is targeting the target vector, which is the docking port. There we go, docked. Lovely. I'm just going to time warp us into daylight because I like to be able to see what we're doing. Okay, now let's get our crew into the space station proper. Now, the game is perfectly happy to let crew transfer through this docking port. If you were to open this up and do, where's it at? Transfer crew. And, well, it has popped up off the edge of the screen for me here. If you were to click transfer, you could just click one of these things and transfer your crew in. My head canon, my imaginary canon, my imaginary properties of these parts is that these small docking ports, the juniors, are too small for a Kerbal to fit through. So just for the purposes of roleplay, I want to get our Kerbals over there by EVA. Let me check real quick. Yes, we do have a jetpack. So this is our first mission, I guess, with jetpacks unlocked. So let's have Jeb use his jetpack to head back to the docking port, or the airlock. Oh, right. We have a space tug attached to the docking port. Hang on. We're not quite ready for this. We need to get rid of that tug first. You need to be set to orbit, retrograde. And we're just going to burn you until a negative periapsis to deorbit you. Okay, now, Jeb. Now you have a door you can get in through. So let's get you onto the airlock. Grab and board. And from here, I'm going to transfer you into the command part. Wait a minute, was that? Might have been Val. Who is in which part at this point? Oh no, that was Jeb. Okay. So, Val, your turn to do the same thing. Grab on board. And let's have you hang out in the porthole. So let's check our contracts at the moment. You know what? I was looking at the wrong contract. This is the Minmus one. We already completed the space station around Kerbin 1, didn't we? Okay, fine. We're just going to hang out here for 30 days. Let's take a look at... These are done inflating now, right? If they are, then it should be possible to transfer crew into them. Yes, it is. Okay, so... inflatable habitats are inflated. Let's just turn lights on, because I like having lights on. We're going to fill up the oxygen tanks on the station as much as we can, and then get rid of this tug. Okay, got all the windows for each of those pressurized small tanks up, which took a minute. Kind of annoying, to be honest. But now, let's find all the parts on the station proper that can hold nitrogen, and just click in. We'll suck as much as we can out of these. Okay, I think we've sucked as much nitrogen out of these tanks as we can. We have approximately half a tank left over in each of these, so we brought well more than enough than we needed. We can get rid of this little tug thingy right now, undock. Point you retrograde. Activate engine. And once more, we're just going to burn until negative periapsis to get rid of this. And here is our station. I suppose now all we need to do is wait for 30 days. Form the crew transfer near Kerbin. Yes, in fact, we did do that. Thank you. So let's just go to the map screen. We could get another mission going in progress with this one simultaneously. But it's kind of a lot to keep track of if you start doing that a lot. I just like to do one at a time. So we're just going to time warp until we get to 30 days on the counter here. Well, that looks funky, doesn't it? Looks like we're going retrograde. I think it was just a phasing thing. The frame rate. Anyway, contract complete. Put a Kerbal in orbit for 30 days. So at this point, we're going to leave the station here with as much supplies aboard as we can. So let's pump out... let me take a look first. I want to time warp a little more because I want to do our landing in the day. And we're going to target our landing towards Kerbal Space Center. Okay, so let's drag as much supplies out of this pod as we can. And leave them in orbit. Let's bring in food, water, oxygen. Okay, let's get our Kerbals back in the re-entry pod. Let's see. First, we have to transfer to the airlock. It's telling me the hatch is obstructed. I don't think it is, game. I think the hatch is perfectly unobstructed. However, I'm wondering if it's because I have this airlock clipped a bit into here. Well, in that case, we'll use the hatch on this part and just, we'll just pretend that we went out through the airlock. Why is she departing with 0 monoprop? She's supposed to take it from the tanks on board. There are definitely monoprop tanks on board. Okay, let's do this. We'll just transfer her through the docking port. Do you take monoprop if you go? You don't. Why aren't you filling up your tanks with monoprop? Don't understand. Well, I think there's something funky going on with the mod here. I'll have to check it out after I finish the episode. For now, we'll just do a crew transfer through the docking port. Okay, let's undock. Danger, there is no food. Oxygen is dangerously low. Yes, all of these things are true. SAS on. Turn retrograde. And we'll use the RCS thrusters to get clear of the station. It is true that we have no food or oxygen. But that's okay, because we're deorbiting. So let's start our retrograde burn here, and we want to pull the trajectories marker down roughly to Kerbal Space Center. Okay. Just noticed that our staging for our parachutes is a little funky, so let's fix that. Now we're just going to time warp. Let's go ahead and just ditch that lower section. There's the Space Center. Where are we going to land at? Like right out in here. Actually, more like here. Let's get the drogue chute out. And touchdown. Heat shield exploded again. That seems to be a common happening. But here we are, safely on the ground. Let's recover vessel. 100 science earned. Not bad, you know. I don't even know where we got that from. What experiment were we running? We're up to just short of 2 million spaceos. We could do a bunch of upgrades now if we wanted to. Don't actually need them at the moment, so I'll hold off. Okay, in the next episode, I think we're going to look at probably the thing to do is a crewed mission to the surface of either Moon or Minmus. In between episodes, I'm going to take a look at my mods and see if I can figure out why my EVA wasn't working. So in Kerbalism, the EVA doesn't use special EVA propellant like it does in stock Kerbal Space Program. It uses monopropellant, and it actually consumes it, so you have to bring enough monopropellant to EVA. It doesn't just get infinitely replenished like it does in stock Kerbal Space Program. So the way that's supposed to work is when you send your Kerbal an EVA, he takes a ration of monopropellant from the ship's supplies into his EVA pack. For some reason that wasn't happening. I had plenty of monopropellant on board the ship, but the Kerbal wasn't taking it into his EVA pack. So I'll have to figure out what's going on with that. But thanks for watching for now, and I'll see you next time. Just looking back at the monoprop issue real quick. So you can see monopropellant in the ship is 45. Let's EVA Jeb. Now his monopropellant is 0, even though he's supposed to have 5. But if we switch to the ship, it's now at 40 instead of 45. So the 5 was taken out for the Kerbal, but it wasn't placed in his inventory for some reason. But now if I re-enter the ship, it's back to 45. So it's like the monopropellant was aboard the Kerbal, but not available for use in the EVA jetpack. I'm going to try to track down the source of this issue real quick. So I did some Googling, and I found somebody talking about having the same issue from back in 2021, but it was claimed to be fixed in Kerbalism version 3.0 and newer, and this is version 3.16. Clearly I'm still having this problem, so I don't know what to think about that. I've installed Kerbalism before, and I've never had this issue. The using monopropellant for EVA fuel system has always worked fine for me. And what's even weirder is it worked for us for those first 2 EVAs when we transferred the Kerbals from the pod into the station. It's just when we tried to transfer them back that the problems occurred. I don't really know what to think about that. But I think I have a workaround, not really a fix, but just a workaround. So I went into my Kerbal Space Program directory and opened game data, which is where your mods are stored. Kerbalism config, system, and there was a file in here, it's over here now, called eva.cfg. I just took it out of there. This is, from the game's perspective, this is the same as deleting it, but I still have it in case I ever need to restore it for some reason. But I just got it out of the config files. So now, if I EVA, Jeb is holding EVA propellant instead of monopropellant. So basically we've bypassed the Kerbalism system and we're back to the stock system of EVA propellant. Let's fire that up. So we'll burn a little bit of it. We're not going to take off, of course, because this is Kerbin, the gravity's too great. But let's just burn a little of it up. Now let's climb back in the craft. And go on EVA again. And it's completely restored, even though there's nothing on the craft storing EVA propellant. So this is just how the stock system works. You have a limited amount when you EVA, but you have infinite replenishments whenever you enter your craft. So effectively, I guess what I'm saying is we're just not using the Kerbalism EVA system. We're going to use stock EVA system. That's our workaround. And then one final addendum is I use the cheat menu to bring up a new copy of the space station. All I've done is I clipped this airlock out 1 notch farther out, so it's just slightly less clipped. But it's enough that the game doesn't think the hatch is obstructed, so that Kerbals can now exit through the airlock as they were meant to. Everything else is identical. It's functionally the same spacecraft. It just has a usable airlock now.